Welcome to the Heal Deal Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leona Allen, and I'm here to help you achieve more freedom in your health and your life. I'm the founder of Freedom Health Systems, and I've been a licensed chiropractor and wellness coach for over 2 decades. I've helped men, women, and children transform their lives by removing the physical, chemical, and emotional barriers to natural healing. Every week, I'll be taking you on a journey where you will discover the real truth behind what it takes to heal your mind, body, and soul. Allow me to be your guide as you travel this road to renewed health and a new life. It's time to make a deal with yourself to heal yourself. Please keep in mind that this podcast is for educational purposes only and not to be used as a replacement for medical diagnosis or treatment. With that said, let's begin. I love it when I do that. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another amazing episode of the Heal Deal Podcast. And those who have followed me for a while know why it's amazing is because I have another amazing guest for you today. And I am so thrilled to be joined by Dustin Strong, a world-renowned holistic health clinician who's helped countless clients find balance when traditional healthcare approaches fall short. And I've been personally trained by Dustin myself, and he brings a unique perspective that integrates nutrition, physical exercise, spiritual balance, and personal motivation to create lasting lifestyle changes. So whether you're struggling with anxiety, battling depression, or simply seeking greater mental clarity, today's conversation will offer practical insights to support your journey. So go ahead and grab your favorite tea or favorite water, find a comfortable spot, and join us as we explore the natural path to mental wellness. Dustin, welcome. You need another. Here you go. Let's do this again. There we go.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Heal Deal Podcast. I'm just so happy to finally have you join me today. And I'm really excited about this topic. It comes up not just in your office, but in my office as well and around the world. So it's very important that we have this conversation. But before we get into today's topic, you mind sharing why your interest in this area of mental health? I mean, I'm just jumping right in, aren't I?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so many stories that come to mind when I think about why I'm doing this, but it started very personally years ago when antidepressants were starting to just come on the market. Unfortunately, I think that well-meaning practitioners wanted to help people, and a couple of family members of mine were put on them, and they had the worst result that you can imagine. And that alone was a 5-alarm fire in my brain that said, I have to do something about this. I have to understand why. Why would somebody be given something to help with depression that actually caused them to, take their lives and to actually die by suicide? And this didn't slow down. This started happening more and more. And to this day, I mean, I get a message from the universe every day I go home that I need to do more. And that's why I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak on this. That there's a billboard that says how many people die by suicide every day. That says it on my way home. Now they're highlighting specifically, obviously they have their slant on that. They're saying by guns, right? And my point is I'm not going to get either way on that argument, but I'm going to say without it, they're still not they're going to feel the same, right? They still feel like ending their lives. And that's a deeper problem that we can do so much about. And that's what I wish I could, if I had my 5 seconds to talk to the whole world, I'd say there are many things you can do to improve it. You just, you may not have to do everything all at once, but there's always the next right thing to do. And once you start walking down the road of nutrition and understanding this, you start to understand that it's a whole treasure of things that you can do to improve your whole health, not just your mental health. So.
Yes, absolutely right about that. And the reason why I'm just excited to have you here, and thanks for sharing that story, because I have you here because I have my own personal story as well and how it can relate, having teenagers and knowing having women with teenage girls and boys where they go through their phase of depression, menopausal women going through their phase of depression, middle-aged men. I mean, it just seems to happen in all phases. And we get asked a lot, what do I do about it? What can I do? And I experienced depression personally. So I really realized that not only could it be an issue in a lot of health issues, it can also be what's the word? It's like when someone wants to get better, they want to lose weight, they want to eat better, they want to do better. There's that level of mental stress that won't allow them to do a lot of the things that they want to do. It's hard for them to be on a new journey because they deal with the depression or the anxiety and things like that. So that's why I want to have this conversation, because I'm trying to throw in all the different areas, because people think mental health is, those more severe things, but sometimes we can address some of those days that we just don't feel like eating a salad, or we don't feel like going to work, or we don't feel like doing the things that make us stronger and better, because it seems like a link between mental health and whether we do the things that we need to do.
I think you bring up a really good point in reminding everybody that we all have different versions of ourselves all day long, right? We have that version of
Right.
ourselves that is on top of their game and everything's great and we feel good, we know where we're going. And then the next day we could have moments where we're completely not feeling that. We're feeling disconnected and disengaged. And so it isn't a fixed point, right? It isn't like either you're depressed or you're not depressed. It's not like a light
Right.
switch that goes on and off. There are many subtle layers in between. And I think the deeper you get into it, the more we need to examine, the chemistry that's involved, because it's very real. It's a very real thing. And I'm not to say that chemistry fixes everything, right? Exercise and sunlight and all these things are wonderful. But I would often tell people, there's something called oxytocin, that it's this bonding hormone. It's this big, beautiful thing that we can talk about a lot. It would very helpful for people with depression, honestly, because it's a big missing piece in our lives. But it comes from hugging people, right?
Yeah.
When you feel connected, if you hug somebody for long enough, your body starts to produce and release this oxytocin. But if you don't have the chemistry to make the oxytocin, it doesn't matter how long you hug somebody. So we have to recognize that there is required chemistry, and we don't want to replace it with something that is trying to stop things from happening in our body. We want to use that as information to say, well, how do I get more of this? And how do I bring in everything so my body can make all the things it needs to make,
Yeah, so that leads me, let's talk about the foundation of that.
Hmm.
Okay, because sometimes when we want better mental health, we want to be happy, we want to feel whole. But I think a lot of people have a hard time achieving something they don't completely understand. So
Yeah.
can you start by just explaining the foundation, what we should look for, instead of trying to find that happy, feel good, bubbly, what's that those what is it called? We feel good. Goodness, I can't think of the term. Warm
Euphoric?
and fuzzy. Yeah,
Oh, warm and fuzzy.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like we wanna
Okay.
feel warm and fuzzy all the time, but we
Yeah.
gotta understand that foundation. It's like, because if you don't feel warm and fuzzy, it doesn't mean you have a mental health issue, right?
Right.
So it's like a
Right.
stage in life. It's, we go through our ups and downs. So there's a difference between our natural ups and downs and how the world has defined mental health. So
Yeah.
people can get that clear, you know,
Mm-hmm.
can you go into, me, I'm like I go around before I get to the point.
You do
So
it.
the point I'm trying to make is the foundation of what it really takes, what we need to have a solid foundation of, and then before we can actually expand it to whether mental health is an issue or not.
Oh, wow. Um, well, as a nutritionist, when you speak in foundations, I think of, what are the biggest pieces that we need to maintain our health overall. And when I think of depression or anxiety, um, I think of in terms of this gets pretty complicated, honestly. But I think in terms of being able to enjoy the moment, to be present right now is really it's not so easy, right? People say, "Oh, just be here now," right? That's the thing that you hear people say. But if you don't have nutritional foundations and all these all of the things that can support that, it gets harder and harder. So the question begins to be, well, what's the first step? And I don't want somebody to feel overwhelmed that they have to do 100 things to get well. It's really about figuring out what's the biggest piece that's been missing from your life. And let's start there and let's add that in. Depression tends to be, and this is an oversimplification of it, quite honestly, but it tends to be too much thinking about things that have happened in the past, spending too much time reviewing like what you did wrong or what you're missing, or sadness that comes from looking in the past too much and not being in the moment, right? And another simple way of thinking of anxiety is too much worried about what's coming next, right? Instead of being in the moment. So, there's so many practices out there that are so good and helpful to that. They try to help people be mindful. They try to help people be present in now, because this is where all the happiness in the world lives, is right now. And if we can't do that, we have to start figuring out why, right? Why, what's pulling us back or what's pushing us forward? And is it chemistry? Is it a lack of things that help us be calm, right? And to be here. Minerals are a big piece of that. So many times people don't realize that they're antsy or agitated because their body just doesn't have the minerals to help just calm their nervous system down. And so this is why I say it's a treasure trove when you start to look at it this way, and instead of judging yourself or feeling that something's wrong with you, or that, that there's just something not right about your life, you can use this as a way to start to inform you as to whether or not you simply are getting enough in the foods that you're eating that can allow you to have an appropriate response to things.
Okay, so I got two things. So the foundation is being in the moment, not being so focused on the past and worried about the future. And then chemistry, which is what we get from the foods we eat, the
Yeah.
minerals and the vitamins and all those good things there. Is there anything else that's part of that solid foundation?
Yeah. I mean, so being in the moment, and I would say, and this is me getting a little more profound than I usually do right away into a talk or conversation, but I believe that all of human suffering is the result of this illusion of being separate from other people. It's a loneliness, right? People feel that they're the only one going through this. They feel that everybody else has all these things, and they see this world out there, and it really is a lack of connection. It's our inability to be able to get connected to another person, or even the belief that God is somewhere separate from you, right? Like God isn't right here. All of this idea that we start to recede into a place that is lonely and by ourselves, instead of seeking ways to get connected or finding people who are a part of your tribe, and finding ways to get connected. And we find when the more you do that, the more your whole world opens up to all kinds of healing. So there's a big piece to that. It can be very isolating to feel that you have depression and anxiety. And I think, again, the opposite of that is going to find ways to be connected to people as opposed to disconnected from them.
I love that aspect, and this is the heal deal, so we can get as
Mm.
deep as we want to.
Okay.
All right, but I think that is a huge part. The separation that kind of ties in to the spiritual aspect of
Definitely.
healing as well. So I completely agree
Well,
with
and
that as
Robert
well.
Putnam he was just on there's a show called Join or Die. And it was so profound. And when he said in there, joining one group, just being a part of one group, reduces your risk of dying in the next year by half. There's so much more to that powerful being connected, finding people that you can be with and share space with, and enjoy the what life is about, is being connected, right?
Yeah.
And being a part of something bigger than just ourselves.
Yeah, being a part of something. Like I
Yeah,
tell clients sometimes, just do stuff. They're worried about, what do I eat? What do I do? I'm like, just have fun, hang out with your family, go for a
sure.
walk, get some sunlight. Sometimes it could be that easy. If you're feeling blue, just go outside and get some fresh air. And I have moments like that. Ain't nothing
Yeah.
like I'll just call it, I tell my kids, I just got to do my rounds. And they
Yeah.
know what that means. That means I'm gonna go outside and walk around the yard,
Oh,
get some
nice.
fresh air, and then boom, I'm good. I'm good to go. So just
Yeah.
understanding that, spiritually with people, the people you love, with nature. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Well, and it's very natural for people to get in their own heads, right? To
Yeah.
really to look at things from this outside view, as if we're not actually in the life even. And no one is immune to this, right? And everybody, I think, at some point in life is going to go through periods of rumination and really thinking about the bigger things in the world. And I think the more, though, that we can spend time talking with each other about this, the more connected we can feel when we're going after these things. So there are a lot of great ways that people are trying to help, heal people, and in the mental and spiritual ways. And we couldn't mention them all right now, but if I were to distill it down to, I think the simplest way for me to explain that, I think that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you there. Like chemistry, being in the moment are huge. Separation or just being part of a group. And I'll just add one more, then we'll
Hmm.
move on. Because I know there's like, I think of one, they're like, oh, there's another. But I think this is really important for our listeners is environment as well. It kind of
Oh,
ties in with the connection with other people, but it also can be, the environment you keep, the music you listen to, the company you keep, the way your house looks, the colors you wear. There's so many other factors. Environment is a huge one.
definitely. Oh, and that I can already hear people saying, well, if you're just around other people who are sad or angry all the time, that's just going to make you sad or angry. And there's something to that. It is important to find people who do elevate you, who do make you feel good about yourself, right? And that's not always easy, but it's the more you can be in, you can have some inspiration to know that there are people out there who will, right? You just have to find them sometimes. It takes a little effort to do that.
Yeah, so just wanted to share some ideas out there of what the foundation and what it really takes. So if you're struggling and you want to get better and feel better, start to look at the world around you. Start to look at your foundation, what you're putting in your body. Are you worried? Are you ignoring the moment because you're worried about something that happened 10 years ago, worried about something that's going to happen 2 years from now, and change your environment. Get rid of that old couch, or you know get them dust balls out your kitchen. But the thing is, create an environment that will help create that happiness that you desire. So I wanted to start with that because I think that gets overlooked. Everybody's looking for that herb or that supplement, but we need to look at these other things when it comes to mental health. So I guess we'll get into the next part of it as far as the more clinical aspect. Because I know some people are like, yeah, that's great, but
Yeah. Yeah. Now what?
yeah. So I know you know what I'm talking about. So those people, they're like, but, what you got for that?
Well, and this is where, as a nutritionist, I always want to make sure that they have a fighting chance to make the happy hormones. And I think if we really think about the way that we've been approaching mental health in the biggest ways in this country, and it's to try to keep these neurotransmitters higher in the brain, right? Serotonin, dopamine. These are your happy hormones that live in your brain. And when people are taking medications, it's almost always to try to keep that hormone high, right? Keeping it from being reuptake inhibitors, what they say. And so if we're going to accept that premise, if we're going to say, okay, these are the things that make us high or happy, not high, we should look at what it takes for our body to make them, right? Instead of going straight to inhibiting them from moving on to the next life. Because in my opinion, that's like eating yesterday's, it's leftovers. It's leftover, neurotransmitters. Why don't we make new ones every day? Nobody likes leftovers, right? Well, not so much. And when you start to ask those questions, you really start to see these big gaping holes in our diet, where the things that we need to make them would be coming from. And I think one of the biggest pieces that's overlooked tremendously is omega 3s, right? Getting good healthy fats. We've talked about this a lot. And the data is so profound on this. And I think that's unfortunately where people they think, well, all medical science, if this was true, we would know about it. And unfortunately, that's not, what's true. There's no marketing campaign behind omega 3s out there. There's no lobbying group, right, that's getting it into our forefront. So we have to learn these things on our own. Even though the research is there, we have to just know, we have to have somebody connect us to it to help us understand. There's a beautiful meta-analysis out of Colombia years ago that said that omega-3s are effective against primary depression, right? That's just one little piece of, the whole nutrition pie, but it's one of the bigger pieces, to tell you the truth. It's not one little piece. And if you could just focus on that, that could be all the difference. And that's my question to people is, what if you just are missing this thing that has been shown over and over and over again to cause people to not feel great? And then you bring it in, what if you feel great, right? That's a better question.
So one thing you say a lot is chemical or chemistry.
Yeah.
And one thing that pops in my head is a lot of people think that when you have mental dysfunction, I'll call it that, they think it's what they call it a chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people end up on, you know, alcohol, medications, things to help with that imbalance. And
Yeah.
one thing that I love that you said is how to make happy hormones.
Yeah.
And a part of it is nutrition, a good healthy diet, and the omega-3s,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So is there more? So can you talk about the difference between, you can elaborate a little bit more on the nutritional deficiencies? And do you also have any information on how the medications work? This is a disclaimer. We're not telling anybody to get on
Sure.
or off medications. This is for
Yeah.
educational purposes. But I know that's a huge thing right now because antidepressants is one of the number one medications that are prescribed for our mental well-being.
And they are. They're prescribed a lot. Okay, even without diagnoses often, and without the person necessarily being a mental health care professional who's prescribing the medication. And so I always say the quality of the questions we're asking are going to determine the quality of our lives.
Right.
And when somebody is currently taking medication, and whether or not they feel it's working for them or not, I would want them to ask the question, well, how did they determine that you needed this medication? Right? What was it? Right? Was it just, that you said you were feeling down or blue, or, did they actually look at whether or not you need this chemical support in your brain, right? Did they do any testing on that? And usually it's not. So there's a lot that we need to know about that, right? We have to understand that there is a period of time, even when people are being given medications, that they're trying to figure it out, right? What's going on? I take a different approach, right? If instead of giving somebody something that's going to try to stop serotonin from getting, taken into the next part of its life, I would say, well, how do we make that serotonin? And when you really understand, there's so much chemistry involved in that, like vitamins and minerals is what I mean by that. If you start to really see how much vitamin D you need, how much zinc you need, how much vitamin B's you need to be able to make the serotonin in the first place, then you start to say, well, maybe that is more interesting. Maybe I'm not getting enough of those first instead of stopping it, because here's where it gets really confusing. And I'm sorry if I'm talking, too crazy about this, but when we have too high of these neurotransmitters, that's when we start to actually feel really bad. And so the assumption is always that the neurotransmitters are low. We're not checking to see whether or not they're going to be too high. And that's, I think, where we get into the danger zone. And there's a lot of people who, when they go on these, it increases their thoughts of suicide or homicide. And it's often because there are too much neurotransmitters in the brain. So we can't just assume that because somebody is not feeling well that they have low neurotransmitters, right? We have to look at the whole person and serve them and understand what's going on. So we don't want to force something to stay high in the brain. We want to go with nature and help nature make those determinations. But nature can't do that if we don't provide what nature needs to do that.
Yeah. Me, it's like when you're talking, I'm like, I had this next thought. So we talked about the medications, right? So sometimes we have the holistic people that have their tricks and tips and tricks, or
Yeah.
whatever. I think that's the new thing people say now. They have their tips and tricks as well, like biofeedback. And
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on those types of remedies or
Again,
treatment.
cognitive therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, biofeedback, all of those have value. There is some value. But what I'm trying to get at when someone is presenting me with a constellation of symptoms, and depression is one of them, well, I'm trying to figure out what are they really depleted in, what are they missing that could bring in and help the body heal all of these things. And it really comes from this understanding that the body is trying to heal itself all the time. But we have to replace 330 billion cells every day in our body, right? Which means we have to bring in the appropriate nutrition to do that. And it's not going to happen with Pop Tarts and Fruit Loops. It's not going to. We have to have proteins and fats and vitamins and minerals for those to do that. And the same things that we need to do that are the same things we need to make these hormones and make sure that these hormones are balanced, right? That they're in appropriate levels. And so when all the boats are in the harbor rising and going down together, it's because we have all of the nutrients together. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Hey, I got you. Hope the audience can follow because it's like you're so bright in all this, and my mind is like I'm trying to think of the place of the listener and kind
Yeah,
of how they would relate to it because they're going to be like, well, some of them aren't on meds, but they're getting wires attached to them every week,
sure.
so there's so many different things and treatments or procedures out there, but you do a great job of bringing it back to, all right, but what's the root cause? What's really going on?
Right,
Or what is the reason why this is happening? Is this the right solution for the right problem? And that's really the theme of all this. If you're dealing with mental health, why? And you got to
right.
figure it out. Yeah.
And I think everybody should be empowered to know that we have the abilities now to understand why something works or doesn't work because we have the ability to research these things on this little pocket computer we have. And I never want to know that something works. Like you say that, the electric stimulation. Okay, I'm happy to know if that's working, but I want to know why it's working because that's what really empowers us. What is it actually doing? And once we understand that, then we can apply it to us as a personal, individualized care. Because if it's not working, and I see this all the time, see, but well, 20% of people, and this is how they put it, and I don't like this, failed the treatment, right? They failed the treatment. And there's so many times that people say, yeah, well, it works for some people, doesn't work for other people. And for me, I want to know, well, did they have all of the nutrition to be able to respond like that? Or would they all have had the same result? Perhaps that percentage of the people who are not getting the good result from these is because they don't have the omega 3s and the zinc and the Bs to help facilitate what that stimulation is trying to make happen in the brain. And you're never going to hurt yourself or anybody else by making sure you're getting more whole food nutrition, right? That's the beauty of it, right? You're not forcing something. Your body has this physiological economy. It can help you kind of figure out whether or not if you get a little too much of magnesium, you're going to eliminate it. When you approach things from a whole food nutritional approach, it's the risks are so low and the benefits are so high. It's just I think the best way to start.
Yeah, because I want to say two things before I do that. Because you mentioned in the last segment Pop Tarts.
Yeah.
It's not going to help you, but sometimes that's what people use to help them feel better. That could be the thing
Oh,
that could be causing the problem. They don't
yeah.
feel good. And that's when they end up eating the Pop Tarts and the Fruit Loops or the ice cream and all these other things. So we got to get that relationship
Well, and it comes back to connection, Dr. Leona, right?
right.
That's how a lot of people connect to other people is over food, right? And it's they show love with food, and I've seen this so many times, and it is a beautiful way to connect. But yes, I think we need to start to re-examine: does it have to be something that is loaded with unhealthy things, or can we find healthier, real whole food ways that we can connect with each other and nourish somebody, right? Truly give them something healing and still make it taste good. I think that the world is offering up so many better options now to help satisfy that want for something tasty, but also satisfy your body's want for something nourishing. You know?
And sometimes that food could be used as their companion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
They're alone and they're like, "Ooh, ice cream,"
Well,
just to
sure.
yeah, to
Then
make them
your
feel
grandmother who gave you that first bowl of ice cream is right there with you, right? That's
Mhm.
a way of being connected to people
Yep,
who made you feel good about yourself, and I love
exactly.
that,
So
right?
sometimes I like have them look at their connection with food.
Mhm.
So and I can totally relate, like, a little bit about my story. I used to deal with depression and, about 10 years ago goodness, time flies.
Yeah.
Has it been? Okay. My oldest is 17, so 17 years ago. Jeez. I
Wow.
was 80 pounds overweight. Not only was I deficient and toxic and sick and inflamed, I dealt with depression. And
Mm,
actually, the depression I dealt with probably since I was 5 or 6, but it was just such a part of me. It was my normal, just an
sure.
angry, moody child that, had that trigger, right?
Right.
So that was me most of my life. But I remember when I was in this healing journey and I loved my bread. That was my girlfriend, my boyfriend. My that was everything. I loved bread, okay? But I had this connection because we were talking about how we use Pop Tarts or things for comfort.
Yeah.
Bread was my thing,
Mm,
and I
mm.
didn't realize it until I started healing. Because I remember when I was going through the journey and learning, oh, wheat and gluten can cause inflammation. And it was high in carbs and being pre-diabetic. So I started reduce breads. That was one of the first things I did. And I started to feel better and lose weight. And, I did what most people did. Oh, I'm doing good. Let me go ahead and get a burrito. All right.
Reward yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a while since I had a burrito. And that's when Chipotle first came out, right? So I love Chipotle. So I would go and get a burrito. And then the depression came back. And I'm like, what
Mm,
in the world? I was
mm,
depressed, but still didn't connect it. Went
mm.
back off the bread, ooh, I've been good. Go to Chipotle. Depressed again. Then I made a connection that the food that I connected with to help me feel good was actually causing the problem.
Yeah.
And even though I did it because I was depressed, it made me depressed. So it's like, it's confusing. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I'm just saying, I made that huge connection that it was actually the food that I thought was comforting me just probably put me in another state. And a lot of people, that's why I said in the beginning, we have to understand what is mental health? What really
Mm,
is it? And I believe it's just being healthy spiritually, physically, and mentally. But for me, I found that connection. That's where I saw the connection between that food and my mood.
mm.
And that's where it changed everything. So now I just gave myself another question. So if eating it made me depressed, why did I eat it when I was depressed? So I'm trying to understand. So it could have been the withdrawals. I don't know.
Yeah.
But once you get healthy and then bring those foods back, people tend to find that connection.
But that right there is worth anybody who's watching this is just to pay attention to how you feel
Yeah.
after eating things because it really, I think it's been dismissed for so long how much that does impact you. Now, I could say an awful lot about your burrito situation there because here's what happens is that people eat in a stressed state. And if you're in a stressed state, you're in something called fight or flight. And if you're in fight or flight, you are not in rest and digest, the opposite of fight or flight. And so you can't digest everything appropriately because it's like eating a burger and then running a marathon. You can't do it both at the same time. You should be eating after you've done a bunch of activity, not right before a bunch of activity. So when you don't digest that, those proteins that can get into your blood and create all kinds of inflammation, all kinds of problems. And when people do stress eat, those are the foods that they become sensitive to because they didn't digest them. So it's not to say that you shouldn't be able to eat burritos for the rest of your life, right? I think it's what we have to do is make sure that your body's able to clean out, the antibodies that happened in response to the food you weren't digesting, and then make sure that when you do eat that burrito, you're relaxed and not in a hurry and able to fully digest it. That's I think where a lot of people don't realize is that most of the foods that they're sensitive to because they're eating it really fast, they're running out the door, or they're eating it because they're stressed, right? And so they're trying to do something, and that will make things worse for you in the future if you don't catch that piece. That's really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, and I was probably eating it so much at the time, I didn't see the connection
Mm,
until I disconnected from it. So, I mean, I just wanted to share my story so people can understand. I
yeah,
love how you broke it down as well about the stress response, because probably when I was eating bread in the past, I probably did develop a sensitivity to it because it was I was eating it because I was stressed.
yeah, yeah. You
Yeah.
were seeking comfort in
So
food.
then I introduced it when I was in the journey. It was a celebrate, "Hey, I'm doing well," but my body probably had created this stress response,
Yeah, yeah.
flashbacks. Like,
Right.
"No." So how I don't really eat them anymore, so
Oh
I'll
no, I see.
maybe I wonder if I should try it now. Now I just do a bowl now, and then I'm very happy with it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll just do a burrito bowl, and I make them
yeah.
at home, so
And you don't
it's
have the
evolved.
problem
Yeah,
when
I
you
don't
eat
have
the
a
burrito.
desire for a burrito.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you. But just to, again, have that connection to
Yeah.
know that it was something that you ate that
Mhm.
brought your mood down. I don't think we can say that enough. I think people do need to know that if you are feeling worse after you eat something, that's something to pay attention. Not to say that you're never going to be able to eat that food again, right? That's the thing is people get this worry. Well, what can I eat? And they get upset about that, and it's understandable. But we do need to find ways to add in a couple of things that we know are truly nourishing us, and maybe take a little break from those that are not, that make us feel that way for a while until we can figure it out, or have somebody like yourself to guide them to understand what it is. So
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, this is fun. I love talking about this. Okay. So let's see. Big recap real quick. So we talked about how people see mental illness, the foundation of health. We talked about some of the areas that we need to make sure is in balance, the chemistry, the moment you're in, the people, the environment you keep, the company you keep. And he touched on some nutritional deficiencies like omega-3,
Mm,
zinc. So really just learn to eat to live, eating a balanced diet, just putting it all together too. You can't really do it separately. You can't just meditate all day and hope, you overcome it. We got to meditate, then go have something nutritious, and then hang out with the people we love and, put it all together. So any other solutions, or I know it's different for everybody, but some other kind of things that our audience can look at as far as mental health is concerned.
well, if you're somebody who's struggling with mental health right now, I think the most important thing that I want to share with you is that you can't just eat one meal and you're going to feel better right away, right? Nutrition takes a little while to really get to the level where it satisfies all of the needs in your body. So if you're going to choose to add in some omega 3s, right? Or if you're going to add in some whole food vitamin B or something, give it a couple of weeks, right? Because they would do the same with medication. They say, well, it takes a little while to work, right? Well, so does nutrition. So make sure that you're not just eating something and saying, well, I didn't feel better the next day, so that didn't work. Well, no, you probably need a lot more over a longer period of time. So give it some time if you're going to approach it from a nutrition standpoint, because that's really important to be able to do that. And know that even if it's not necessarily giving you an immediate feeling change, it is healing you, right? Your body has to have these nutrients. So there is value to it, whether or not you see it right away or not.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that point up. So people will be like, "Oh, I'm not feeling any better. I'm gonna go back to my old diet." No,
Right.
do it anyway. You
Right.
gotta focus on being consistent and give it time. You can't go wrong. Like I
Mhm.
healed my depression by accident. I was just doing the work. And
Yeah.
then now I can make a connection. But sometimes, the depression, I don't know if we talked about this. We kind of went around and back.
Yeah.
But like sometimes at depression, we all deal with things. And sometimes we have to understand that sometimes this might be just a normal dose of how we feel,
Hmm.
and just not having coping mechanisms. And maybe that should be on the list, having
Yeah.
some coping mechanisms. Because sometimes, there's going to be moments when we're sad. All
Yeah.
right. It's
Yeah.
natural to feel sad when my parents passed away. Yeah, I was depressed. It was just kind of part of it. And a lot of people get on antidepressants after a certain loss and things like that. But I'm like, well, what if? You talked about the stress response. What if we were told, this is a time when you do eat better, when you do
Mm.
need to be around people you love? So I think another thing we have to have a different approach to when we don't feel like ourselves or we know something is off, and having a different approach or redefining that moment in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy, right?
Right.
It does take an awful lot. And I know that the tendency is when somebody is in that space is they want to escape, right? They want something that will distract them and take them out. And I'm not saying that that's bad that they do that, but if that's all you do, then you're never going to get it resolved. It's never going to be that. And there's so much that you can do right on top of that. And I know also that it's not always best to just be around family or people because sometimes family can be stressful, and it is important to identify those people who do make you feel supported and who make you feel heard and seen and validated. And sometimes people don't feel like they have anybody like that. And if I could just encourage you to keep trying, there are people out there who will. There are people out there who will and want to help and want to be there for you. And that's just that's you got to have hope, and that's a tough one, right? Until you see it. And that's why I love that you're giving your story, that you accidentally healed your depression through just making your overall health better. People need to hear stories of people overcoming their depression. Otherwise, they don't know that it's possible. They really don't know that it's possible. They think it's something they have to just cope with. But it is something, as you say, could be healed. And that I wish I could give everybody the hope and the encouragement to know that it is something that can be healed. Yeah.
Yeah. So my homework for the listeners is to do some introspection. Just say, okay, is my diet good? How are my relationships? Is it my job? Is it my
Sure.
home? So we have to start analyzing those things that trigger and why and when we feel the way we do. I think that
Yes.
would be a good start.
And keep going. I mean, I have some individuals who I work with almost on a weekly basis when they're really in a rough spot. And some weeks they feel like they've taken steps backwards, right? Instead of steps forwards. It does take time depending on where you are in this journey. But I will say, even the people who I would say who are struggling the worst out of anybody I've ever met, I will tell everybody listening that there have been at least every other week a report from them saying, this is the best I've ever felt, right? Because they're discovering things that they just never had in their life that they're bringing in. And all of a sudden they're experiencing this whole new level. That doesn't mean that they're not going to, go through this in the healing process, but it is slowly going in the right direction. And the more they recognize the progress, the more they're going to be encouraged to go on. I think oftentimes people do get discouraged, right? Because they maybe make a little progress and then they backslide and they think, oh, well, I'm never going to get there. You have to remind yourself and really celebrate the little wins and bring those celebrations in. Same thing, like when I work with people with weight loss, people get frustrated because, they're not losing maybe everything in a week, right? Like they saw somebody online. But I have to remind them, well, now you have a new habit though. You're actually getting up and moving and you feel better, right? You're getting it. So focusing on the things that are getting better is going to, of course, be a challenge for somebody who's struggling with depression and anxiety. But I just want, maybe if I can encourage you right now, if you're listening, to just take stock of something you did right, right? And know that the more it's going to have a net gain, you just have to keep doing those things and keep celebrating the victories. I will say this. Um, I talked about oxytocin earlier. That one of the most profound changers for this young lady was introducing a probiotic called L-Reuteri into her life, which 96% of the population is missing. And it's very impactful on your body's ability to make its own oxytocin and feel connected. So if that is something that, if you've ever had an antibiotic or exposed to antibiotics in food or pesticides, you don't have this species in your microbiome. So that is one that I would encourage you to maybe find someone who can help you find a species of that, because oxytocin is a wonderful thing to have. And you're going to have a hard time feeling connected if you don't have the support of your body being able to make it. And that one little piece could be the game changer for you, for sure.
That reminds me, oxytocin, isn't that the hormone that increases with nursing?
Yes, it's actually
Yeah.
very much during nursing, during childbirth.
Yeah.
Yes, it is the one that it's a binding hormone. It makes us feel
Yeah.
connected and binded to people.
Because
It
I'm
also
not
helps
afraid
us
to
see other
admit.
people's. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm not afraid to admit, it's like I'm one of those women that I love breastfeeding.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, I enjoyed it. It was not an issue for me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you were able to produce oxytocin, sure,
Mhm.
at that time,
Yeah.
and it gives you a sense of calmness. It gives you the ability to see other people's perspectives better. It's a wonderful hormone that our body makes, but it's a complicated hormone for our body to make. So it takes a little bit more to do that. And once I discovered this part of the microbiome that is essential to help you make that, and realize that most of the vast majority of the population doesn't even have that. That's what I want people to know. It's like, it could be as simple as that. It could be something that's missing from your microbiome, and you can't make this thing make you feel good.
What's it called again?
Oh, L as in lactobacillus reuteri, reuteri. So it's going to be in certain probiotics, not in all probiotics, but there's ways that you can find it out there. I actually make my own yogurt with it. So I have yogurt in my refrigerator at home that is this lactobacillus reuteri strain
Oh.
for
See,
myself.
you're making a lot of good connections for me because I was like, okay, I was going through my depression, but one thing I was doing, because I was on that journey by the time I had my kids and I was nursing, and I was making my own yogurt and sauerkraut.
Oh,
I was into the fermented food thing, and that's
hmm.
probably why my nursing experience was
Big
pretty good.
connection
I had
to your
no
gut health.
problem producing milk,
Mm.
none. I think I was overproducing, yeah, and
Oh,
that makes sense.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
definitely. Well, and there's a lot to, I mean, obviously a lot of these neurotransmitters, the serotonins and the dopamines we were talking about, are made in your gut. So your gut
yeah,
health is going to be a piece. Again, see, it's another opportunity to improve your health and understanding that. And if you've tried the omega-3 and you've tried the vitamin B3 and you've done it and you're not making a difference, then you do want to go deeper. There's more you can do to heal your gut and learn more about what's going on. But there's always the next right thing you can do, and there's always more you can do for your health.
yeah. I just feel like as I'm talking to you, we go through one door, oh, there's another door, oh, there's another door,
Yeah.
because it's so big, there's no
Hmm.
one thing, but I think we really did cover a lot of the main things to get people to start, and then once you start, it seems like those answers and those solutions will come, but it
And
is a
any one of
journey, it is
those,
a process. Go
yeah,
ahead.
they'll get you incrementally towards it. For
Yeah.
some people, it might be the light switch that they needed,
Mhm.
but you can't dismiss the value of learning about needing to have these nutrients. And if you just keep layering them on and layering them on and layering them on, so much is going to, like you discovered, the healthier you got, then it wasn't even a symptom anymore, right? You didn't have that problem. So,
Mhm. And then if I do get depressed, I do have bad days. I mean, I'm
sure.
still have my moods, but I usually know why. So it's like it's usually something that we can usually trigger and find tools and strategies to overcome it, change the environment, block, whatever you need to do. So that's what people need to understand is like, okay, when you do feel down, anxious, trigger, you might have to turn off the news, whatever it is. That's
Right.
another thing that helped me turn that TV off. So there's so many strategies. So we need to recognize what those triggers are and how our
You know,
body
I,
works.
I like that you said triggers, because that is true. People do get triggered by certain things. What I like to try to encourage people to do is find a positive trigger in your life,
Mm,
and then put it anywhere you can. Something that every time you think about it makes you. And this is why pets are so healing for people. It's a positive trigger for you.
yeah.
So if you can assign a value to something that you're going to encounter many times over the day, maybe coffee is a positive trigger for you. Maybe whatever that is, make sure that you're taking advantage of that and putting positive triggers in your path all day long.
Yeah, I'm good at that.
Good.
Yeah, that's back to the environment, the beginning. It has
Right.
to, yeah, I'm like, just my kids and teaching my kids. Like if I'm in a funk, they know how to make me laugh. It's like
Yeah.
they don't take it personally. So my kids are like one of my like positive. If I'm
Nice.
feeling down, I just tell my kids, I need a joke.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't let my moods affect theirs. And they're just silly like that. So just having, the triggers, the positive triggers, and knowing where to go, like
Right.
if you had a negative trigger, go find that positive trigger instead of finding those other triggers that'll put you deeper into that deep, that depressed state or anxious state.
Right.
So yeah, don't go to, "Oh, I wonder what TikTok says about this," or call
Right.
the other I'll find something completely the opposite, someone that knows, "Hey, help me out of this," So that's what I mean by environment and
Mm.
relationships. But as
Mhm.
people heal, I know we probably went in all kind of tangents, but as people heal, just knowing if you have the chemistry right, start building that foundation. I guess we can close with this. Have that foundation.
Mm.
If you don't know what to eat, get the help. All right. Get that chemistry right. And start being more intentional about your thoughts. Are you are you in the moment, or are you worrying about things that already happened, or worried about things that haven't even happened yet? And your environment and the people you hang out with. I think if you kind of get that foundation right, that's going to help with probably, I'll safely say, probably 90% of a lot of the mental illness we're dealing with. So I don't like the word illness.
No.
I don't like that word, but mental dysfunction, we'll just call it that, or
I mean,
imbalance.
yeah,
Go
our
ahead.
human experience is going to have all these things.
Yeah.
There's going to be challenging days, and there are going to be really bad days. And my goal is to encourage people to know that there's more that they can do about it than they realized, and that's I think your goal is too. And they're not. It's not just something that happens to them, and it's not something that is wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them, right? It's that there is something that your body possibly needs, and we just need to help you find whatever that is. And once we can get there, then you can also have the good days and the bad days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then use those bad days as lessons to learn about how you can get back to the good days. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
All right, Dustin, I could go on and on with you, but where can people find you and all those good things? Because I know they're going to want to learn more.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, yeah, Strong on Health. I still see people clinically in Texas. We're in just south of Dallas and Mansfield. So www.strongonhealth.com is my website. And I do create small little videos, on my YouTube channel for people to maybe help identify other things that could be keeping them from feeling, as good as I feel is what I like to say. And I want everybody to feel that way. So yeah, you can find all of that through my website.
And I'm going to have all that information in the show notes. And I appreciate you. I know I've learned so much from you. And it's actually, you help kind of connect a few things that I've gone through in my life and how I can help my clients. So thank you for your expertise and your wisdom and your generosity and helping everybody. So, and thank you for being on this podcast. It's just been amazing. And we'll talk again. I just love just picking up the phone and just talking to you.
Absolutely. Well, I'm here. I'm happy to hear from you. I'm glad we found the time to do this.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you once again, Dustin, for being here. And everybody, thank you for being a part of this amazing episode. Go ahead and rewind and listen. Rewind. You know what I mean? Go back and listen to whatever you need to listen to. And if you have any questions or need any clarification, let us know, because we're here to help you achieve more mental health in your life. So until next time, take care. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, seal the deal to heal by leaving a review, subscribing to the podcast, and sharing with a friend. Thanks again, and we'll continue the journey next week.